Shithikantananda Sachit Sukha Swarupaya Swamini Tapaharini. I was just thinking last Wednesday, what should I speak on the coming Sunday? So it struck me, so let me speak on RamaRajya. Interestingly, after this idea struck my mind, let me speak on RamaRajya. One of our volunteers had phoned me and he asked me the question, Maharaj, is it proper on the part of Rama to banish Sita, who was a pregnant woman? So was it not cruel on his part? So we all know that Rama is considered an ideal king, and that's why we talk about RamaRajya. No, but this discrimination Rama had shown, and he did not perform his dharma well. Many people understand it like this. But we need to understand that if you try to judge Rama, Rama belonged to a completely different period. And when you try to judge Rama, you are using the moral standard of present times to those times. So even if you judge by the moral standard, the morals of those times were very high, not of the present kind. Not that they had inferior moral ideals and we have very superior ideal, not like that. And also the times were different. And Rama had this dilemma. Rama was playing two roles, the role of a husband and also the role of a king. Which role should take precedence? Either the role of a husband to a woman or the role of a king. Rama gave precedence, more importance to the role of a king than to the role of a husband. So, first of all, it's wrong for us to judge using the present moral standard. And second, we need to understand that he was playing two roles simultaneously. What we would do if we were placed in Rama's place or position? We would obviously, give precedence to our husband in the sense that we are selfish. Personal life is more important than public life. But for Rama, it was very important to command the respect of his subjects. So everybody who was under his rule should have full faith in him. He thought if anybody had expressed his doubt in the character of the king, and then he thought actually he was unworthy of rule. He was unworthy of continuing as a king. So that was the moral standard he had set before himself. And for this reason, actually, today we remember RamaRajya, why you call rule of Rama as ideal rule. So many kings came afterwards. Before there were kings. But Rama had set the benchmark, the highest rule, the greatest king and the greatest subjects. So it just came like that, If at all, if you want to define an ideal rule, how it should be like Rama's rule. If at all, of ideal population, ideal subjects, how it should be, like the people who actually were under Rama. So in recent years, it was Mahatma Gandhi who actually brought it into public discourse again. It has been there all through, ever since Rama ruled this country, Ayodhya. But the person who brought into public discourse was none other than Mahatma Gandhi. He used to talk about RamaRajya again and again, but the people who were with him, they would never understand what he meant by RamaRajya. But did he not define? Yes, he did try to define his RamaRajya. So before we go into that, let us first talk about why Rama's rule was an ideal rule. Why we talk about RamaRajya. How did people fare during Rama's rule? How the socio-political situation. So during Rama's rule, there were no widows. That means the husbands of women never died before them. No widows. People never suffered natural calamities. Rains would come on time. No excess rain or deficient rainfall. Elders never had to perform the last rites of younger ones. People were never tormented by wild animals or diseases or by thieves. People never locked their rooms. There was no need. There were no courts. They enjoyed highest peace, highest freedom. Everybody would talk about Rama during his own lifetime. The entire population of the kingdom fell in love with their ruler, as it were. Day and night they would talk about the glory of Rama and Rama alone. Not that posthumously after Rama's leaving this world, they used to talk about Rama. But during his own lifetime, he became such a celebrity. Day and night people would talk about Rama. They never feared Rama's punishment. But rather, they feared that their misconduct might give pain to Rama. People were alert in that way. They never feared Rama's punishment. Rama was never bent upon punishing others. He wanted to set himself as an example, that's all. And he set himself as an example and asked his subjects to follow him, that's all. Yatha Raja Tatha Praja. The king was noble and people also were noble. They were all actually personifications of virtue. Personified virtue. There are no wicked people, no thieves, absolutely. People did not inflict pain upon each other. They did not use harsh language against each other. And that was the condition of the society. They totally fell in love with their ruler and day and night they would talk about Rama and Rama and Rama alone. During his own lifetime. That was the benchmark he had set. So, how that was possible? You know, in ancient India, king would be considered as an embodiment of the divine. King actually was not a human being. He was just a form of God. Why? Why did they give so much of importance to king? Why did they consider king as a form of the divine? You know, king would have a maximum temptation in front of him because ruler practically, absolute power, and the entire treasury was at his disposal. He's the richest man in the king, obviously, in the kingdom. Because all the treasury was at his disposal. Maximum power, maximum money, not an ordinary temptation. Whatever he wants, he can enjoy. Whomever he wants, he can take for himself. Any number of women he can marry if he wants, right? So in spite of having all that temptation, he should be moral. In the midst of all the temptation, the greatest temptation king would be exposed to. And you have to resist all the temptation and you have to set yourself as an example for your people to follow. Not an ordinary thing. Unless you are born with this divine fiber, with a divine element, it would not be possible. This way, they would take extreme care before actually they bring the next ruler, successor, the kings. So how Rama was born, you know. Dasharatha actually had no issue for a long time. Then he did the Putrakameshti Yajna, not an ordinary Yajna, a great Yajna. He brought all the best of the Ritviks, best of the Rishis and sages to officiate that Yajna. He gave a lot of gifts to pious people. And entire city of Ayodhya prayed that, let our king has a great child. So Rama was actually a condensed embodiment of all the prayers. They wanted to have a noble human being in their midst, noble human being as their ruler, and their aspirations got condensed into one human form, and that was Rama. So yatha raja tatha praja. Now see, there is a Sanskrit, the full sloka is Ragni dharmini dharmishtaha pape papa parasada rajanam anuvartante yatha raja tatha praja. We all know this yatha raja tatha praja. So in democracy, yatha praja tatha raja. Still actually we crib and whine all the time. We elect to people, but we are not happy with them. So, right? It's not that, he was born into a royal family. The king was thrust upon us. No. Democracy means what? We elect our rulers, right? But still we are not happy with them. We crib and whine. We don't even allow them to rule for 5 years. From the second day onwards, everybody starts criticizing them. Like the media and people. After all, we have elected them. From among us, only one of the person has become the leader. That's what democracy is. So monarchy means it has its disadvantages. Suppose if the king becomes a despot, autocratic, the people would suffer. If the king turns to be an immoral human being, a weak human being, an indulgent king, so naturally the entire population would suffer. So monarchy is not a perfect system, definitely. For that matter, there is nothing like perfect system. Monarchy has its defects. Democracy has its defects. We know actually. So other forms of rules like oligarchy have its defects, and also communism. It also has its defects. Every system of governance has its defects. It has its positives and its negatives, its advantages and its disadvantages. Now coming back to our point, yatha raja tatha praja, yatha praja tatha raja. So if you want a good king now, a good ruler, what you have to do now in democracy? People should be good, right? From one among the population only one would become the king, ruler. From people only one would become the ruler. That's what democracy is all about. So if you want a good ruler, what you need to do is you need to have good people first. Everybody should be good. It's not such a huge task. In monarchy, people may be bad, but it doesn't matter. If the king is good, everybody would, at least majority of the population would enjoy. Majority of the population would enjoy if the king is good. Maybe 10% of the population is bad, or 20% of the population is bad, or even 100% of the population is bad also. There is no problem because king actually is noble. Not among the people actually somebody would become the king. King actually the royal family belongs to. Oh, so now we have opted for democracy. In democracy, if you want a noble ruler, people must be good. People must be noble. People must follow righteousness. People must follow dharma. So how to achieve that? It's a big problem. How to achieve that? To create noble human beings is a responsibility of ours. We have to create noble human beings. If we are the present generation, we should have an aim how to bring the best generation. What kind of generation you want to bring? So next generation, should they not be better than us? They should be better than us. That should be our aspiration. That should be our goal, our objective. And how can you bring a better generation? Swamiji says clearly that, India actually is Aryavarta, the land of Aryans. Who is an Aryan? A man or woman who is born of prayer is an Aryan. So it's very important that what kind of generation that you are bringing into this world. You must be conscious father and conscious mother. Only through conscious parenting it will happen. It's not just accidentally things are happening now. We have to see in how our ancestors, particularly in royal families, how much they would strive to bring a better child into the world. Rama, not because actually he was taught by Vasishtha, taught by Vishwamitra, he became great. By birth, he was exceptional. All the four, Lakshmana, Bharata and Shatrugna. They were Daivamsa. Rama was Daiva himself, the Supreme Lord, reincarnated as a human being. By birth, they were noble and they needed little training. It was only a formality. The training was only a formality. Not that Rama was born evil and then actually Vasishtha and Vishwamitra, through their teaching, they made a noble human being out of him. No, he was by birth an exceptional human being. So birth is important. So the right intervention would be actually at this stage. When the child is in the womb of the mother, if the mother becomes spiritual, the child will be born with the Daivamsa, with the divine qualities. And afterwards, education and other things are secondary, Vivekananda says. So a man is born God or born demon, he says. He goes to the extent of saying it. He quotes from Manu Dharmacharit, Manusmriti. So it is so important. Afterwards, this training and actually making a noble human being and helping the person evolve into God is not an easy thing. So in democracy, if you want good rulers, the people should become good. How the people will become good? Where you need to intervene, what could be the right intervention at this stage, prenatal stage. This is you have started, this Arya Journey program. And we have conducted workshops here for the last 2 years, and we are trying to popularize the idea. So there is so much of tamas, there is so much of confusion. Even if you have a noble idea today, for people to understand that it's a noble idea, it takes a lot of time. To make people understand, to generate awareness among people. Okay, in democracy, it doesn't happen that actually rulers will not actually take it up and then make it a policy, ensure that actually everybody would get this idea and put something into practice. That you have to do it independently, and this voluntary efforts actually for them to fructify takes a lot of time. So the suffering becomes natural, inevitable in this Kali Yuga, because yatha praja tatha raja, the change has to come in people, and for such a fused population to think in the right way, it takes ions. Where you have your confusion, we have your tamas, okay? You have your lethargy, you have your own understanding, opinion, but there is no other way. You have to change the people. People must become good, people must become noble, and that will happen only when actually a child is prayed for. That's why land is Aryavarta. Aryavarta means Aryan means a person who is highly civilized. Civilized not by training, civilized not through education, civilized by birth. A noble human being, a civilized human being, an exceptional human being has come into the world. Today, actually, we are trying to correct the people through law. It will not happen. Through law, actually, you can't correct. You can't, create a moral human being through law. It will happen only by birth, the first thing. And you need to understand that today, when you look at our society, is much law and little justice. Laws are there, but to enforce them again, effectively, the political will must be there. So the political will, when it is not there, the laws are there, but it is conditionally they are enforced. It's not, they are not equally enforced. Conditionally they are enforced, we see it actually. A democracy, in principle, we are all one. Every human being is the same. Every citizen of the country is same before law. But are the laws being actually implemented in the same way? No. The discrimination is being shown, because that's how actually it works. That's how it is. So the only way is to create a noble human being. So the right intervention would be at this stage, at prenatal stage. That's the one thing. And now we are in democracy, and we crib and we whine against our rulers. And many of the educated people, today they don't take part in this democratic exercise. They don't exercise their vote. They don't use their vote. But still, actually, they think actually the ruler is not good. It's a participatory sport, and you need to involve yourself continuously. Or otherwise, you don't have the right to complain against the ruler. Plato says, in democracy, if you don't participate, if you don't involve yourself, if you don't exercise your right to vote, the end result would be you will be ruled by your inferiors. Okay. The people who are inferior to you in conduct, okay, in virtue, they will rule over you. That is the end result of indifference and apathy. So educated people show more apathy, not knowing the consequences of it ultimately. So this is how democracy goes, That's why Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher, he said, he mocked at democracy. He said, his personal opinion, I prefer to be ruled by a lion than to be my fellow rats, one of my fellow rats. So he preferred monarchy to democracy. So monarchy means the king would not be, a petty-minded individual, right? You were born into a royal family. You had opulence and luxury all around you. So you're noble that way. Whether you don't have, you are not greedy for money. Because you're born in wealth. You're born with a silver spoon in your mouth. And you're not greedy for power also, because your father also was a king. So there was no temptation that way. From childhood, from the very first day, you are enjoying the highest wealth and highest power. So he said that actually naturally that individual would be noble, but not necessarily always, right? You see, if you see human history, there were so many despots, there were so many autocratic kings, misruled. Misrule was there. That's the reason actually we have set monarchy aside and chosen this democracy. But there is no perfect system of governance. Communism, is it better than democracy and monarchy? Or, right? You like communism? Communist country? You want India to be a communist country? No, we don't want, right? But there are some advantages with the communist governance also, you need to know, which are not there, which are not obtained in a democracy. Democracy means freedom and chaos. You understand that? You have the highest freedom, but also chaos. Disorderliness everywhere. So much of corruption. Everybody talks about only rights and rights and rights. Nobody talks about duties and responsibilities. So you talk about right, my right. And today we enjoy the highest freedom because India is a democratic country. But still people are trying for more freedom. You are stifling our voices, people are saying. But you don't understand that you are enjoying highest freedom, political freedom. I'm not talking about spiritual freedom. You go to China and live there for a few years and then you understand what is freedom of expression. How much of freedom of expression you are using, okay? How freely you are living in this country. You understand only when you are put in a communist country because you don't understand otherwise. So the advantage of communist governance is there actually you have less freedom. There is fear. The total oppression of the authoritarian rule would be there. You will have fear but order. Communism means fear and order. The society is orderly because you can't take advantage of laws. Strict punishments actually will be avoided, right? You're hanged in China. Corruption, if is detected, the person is hanged. That's all. Well, here actually, broad daylight actually, you're caught, but still actually you will not be punished. You will not go to jail. So you don't see in India has attained the dubious distinction of the most corrupt country, in Asian continent. About the recent reports of newspaper. But still you don't find anybody actually going to jail. So here freedom and chaos. Democracy means. Communism means fear and order. I know that you don't want the fear, but you want the order. You want the freedom, but you don't want the disorderliness or chaos that it brings democracy. So you want freedom and order. For freedom and order to happen, you need to be a disciplined citizen. And that discipline, it doesn't come just like that. It comes only when you have that goal. What is that goal? The spiritual goal, moksha. If that becomes your goal, and because you will conduct in a responsible manner, in a righteous manner, because you are aspiring for the highest freedom, namely the spiritual freedom, and righteousness becomes important for you. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. We know these are the Chaturveda Purusharthas. Dharma, artha, kama. Artha and kama you can enjoy. As scriptures say you can enjoy. In the Bhagavad Gita also Lord says, Dharma aviruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. So in individuals where actually there is this expression of desire for wealth and desire for pleasure, that desire is also I'm only, says. Dharma aviruddho bhuteshu, but it must be subject to dharma. If it is according to dharma, that desire also me. But if it is not according to dharma, that desire is not from me, that desire is from Maya, that desire is from devil, the evil side of the human being. So dharma, artha, kama, moksha, if everybody becomes a spiritual aspirant, let us say, if everybody actually aspires to mukti, moksha, not political freedom, I want the highest freedom, namely spiritual freedom. So then automatically orderliness will come, because every person you actually impose highest discipline upon yourself, not because there is a law, not because actually somebody is watching over you, not because actually somebody wants you to do that. Out of your own accord, out of your own sweet will, you will conduct yourself in a responsible manner and you will impose the highest discipline upon yourself because you are aspiring for the highest freedom, namely the spiritual freedom. Your goal is truth, your goal is God, your goal is immortality, your goal is highest happiness and bliss. When you have that goal before you, then it becomes possible. You conduct yourself in a responsible manner. Then you don't talk about actually fundamental rights, you talk about only duties and responsibilities all the time. Most of the times you will forego your own freedom, forego your own fundamental rights, but actually you will ensure the rights of others. You will come forward because sacrifice becomes law then. Sacrifice becomes your second nature. Sacrifice will become very dear to you. So you have to have this aspiration, the whole of the population. And is it ever possible to put this objective, this goal before the entire population? So where actually you have to intervene, again prenatal. Only when the child is in womb, when the mother prays, let me have a great child. Let my child be a divine child. Let my child be a noble child. Let my child actually wish the best of everybody. So when you have that aspiration, when mother has such an aspiration, let me have a child actually who is Loka Kalyana Karaka, who only does good to the society. When mother has that aspiration, the child actually will naturally have that desire in him. And that child will aspire for moksha and mukti. Because the child is aspiring for moksha and mukti, he will conduct himself in a disciplined manner. When that degree of discipline comes, you will enjoy the highest political freedom, and also in the end, you will have the greatest reward, namely mukti. So to take the whole population towards that should be the goal of a civilization. I'm talking about not an individual goal, I'm talking about a civilizational goal. Civilization and individual is not separate. A civilization of society, what do you mean by civilization of society? Individuals only constitute society. Individuals only make the society, right? So when the individual changes, the society changes, there will be great civilization. So it should be the aspiration of an entire civilization. So we have to aspire for that RamaRajya, the rule of Rama, because in a democracy, to have RamaRajya, we need to understand that Rama, actually it was a monarchy. So the king was noble, the people were noble. Today as we have adopted democracy, and in democracy, if you want to bring that kind of rule, the ruler must be an exceptionally good person, righteous person. So the ruler, if you want to be good, actually, the population, the people, the subjects must be good. That means people must be good. So that is the only way. There is no other way. There is no other way if you want to improve the quality of governance. That is the only way. So what, according to Mahatma Gandhi, is RamaRajya? He was not talking about Hindu Raj. Okay, whether the historical Rama, whether it did exist or not, Mahatma Gandhi said, my idea of RamaRajya is this. Ram and Rahim are one and the same for me, he said. So his idea of RamaRajya is that the pauper and the king, the pauper and the rich man, both will enjoy equal rights. The pauper and the king both will enjoy the equal rights. That is the idea of RamaRajya. And he further elaborates, unless you lead a conscientious life he meant, you need to introspect yourself. Every human being should develop the capacity to study himself or herself. How good a human being I am. Okay. What are my faults? What are my defects? What are my weaknesses? What are my shortcomings? You have to study yourself. Otherwise, you are an irresponsible citizen by default. If you just go by samskaras, if you just go by tendencies. Every one of us is coming to the world with a mixed bag, right? Some good tendencies, some bad tendencies, both are there. So you will analyze your own being through introspection, through conscientious life, through prayer, and then what are the shortcomings that you have? You will have to overcome them through your own self-effort. If I point out to your defect, at your defects, you will get annoyed, yes or no? Right? If I point out at your defects, you will get annoyed. And if I ask you to correct yourself, you will get annoyed again. So it has to be done individually. And individuals have to do this again out of their own free will. Nobody can enforce this upon you. You have to analyze yourself, that is your responsibility, that is your duty. How good a human being I am. And what actually qualities are preventing me from becoming a noble human being. If these are the qualities, if these are the tendencies actually which are making me, an inferior human being, a petty human being, I will overcome them. So then actually spirituality will come into your life automatically. Only through spiritual sadhana you can effect change in you, samskaras or tendencies. There is no other way. You will seek the intervention of the divine. Automatically you will come to spiritual sadhana. And slowly you will have a human being. And every human being is evolving like this. Evolution is possible. But you have to have the will to evolve. See, the physical body is, you can't do anything about it. It just follows physical laws. Okay, 6 vikaras, it undergoes and then it will die one day. Spirit actually, consciousness is eternally perfect. The soul within you it doesn't need any evolution. So what is that needs evolution then? What is that needs growth? The physical growth, you don't have to do anything about it. Just eat some food, actually body grows according to the genes, according to samskara. You don't have to do any modification there. You can't do it. Right? It just follows physical laws. Spirit, the soul or consciousness, the God actually there is totally perfect. No evolution needed there. That is perfect. The body actually just follows physical laws. Then what needs to evolve? Only the mind. Only your samskaras, only your tendencies, only your instincts, only your desires. Refinement and purification has to happen at what level? Only at the level of psyche, at the level of mind only. So we have come into the world, every human being for that matter, with a mixture of samskaras or tendencies. Some are noble, some are good, some are mean. And so what are the lower samskaras, lower tendencies that I have? You have to introspect. That's why Mahatma Gandhi said, we won't be able to dethrone this demonic rule, the British rule, unless and until every Hindu, he says, starts introspecting himself and leads a conscientious life with steadfastness and faith, he said. Unless you go towards God, you will not be able to dethrone this kingdom, he said, British Raj. You have to make yourself a God first. So in the first place, Vivekananda also says, clearly he says that, why such a great civilization had to be ruled by, first Muslims for such a long period of time and then British for 250 years. Let us introspect. We all follow the law of karma, right? After all, actually, at an individual level, when you talk about somebody suffering, because he is experiencing his own karma, he's suffering his own karma. He might have done something bad in the past, that's why actually he's reaping the fruit of his own action. Right? Cause and effect we believe in. Karma Siddhanta we believe in. That is one of the 4 pillars of Sanatana Dharma. A man suffers, an individual suffers because of his own action. You don't see the action now, but you did it in the past. Now what your suffering is the effect of the past actions. Anyway, past you can't do anything about. You can't undo the past. The only thing that is in your hands is future actually you can make. That's the beauty of human life. You can learn lessons from that suffering and you can change your conduct, you can adjust your conduct in such a way that actually future you can make a beautiful future. That choice, that freedom we all have got, that is the beauty of human life. The past is not our hands. So Swami says that it is because of this untouchability and the social oppression. It went on for centuries. We preached day and night highest Advaita, that everything is consciousness, everything is God. But when it came to practice, it was a miserable failure. We practice untouchability. You ostracized fellow human beings. So social excommunication had happened and social oppression had happened. This is not because religion, Swami again and again says. Today actually a few intellectuals, they understand it in this way. They think actually there is something wrong, fundamentally wrong with Sanatana Dharma as such, religion as such, the spiritual culture of this nation as such. But you need to understand that social oppression had taken place not because of religion, not because of your spirituality, not because of dharma. The dharma is saying that everybody is equal. The dharma is saying that there is God in every human being, and for that matter, every being. The dharma says that there is God in an ant also. You must respect even ant. It has its rights. Simply because you are a little more intelligent, a little more powerful, you don't have the right actually to deprive the right of an ant to live. It has its right to live. That's what our dharma asks you to do. If you really had practiced your dharma, I would have become God on earth for sure. But somehow the human instinct is always selfish. And selfish instinct, first of all, finds expression more than the unselfish instinct. We have the unselfish instinct also. But the circumstances, sometimes, temptations that are there in the world will make us give expression more to the selfish instinct. And it is there in human nature itself to grow at the expense of others. Today in democracy, you can't do it by law, but you do it in a subtle way. Other ways, it is happening, right? So the mighty, the strong, the intelligent always try to exploit the weak. It's always there. So the strong actually tries to exploit the weak, tries to go at the expense of the weak. This is always there. That is a human instinct. That is a human nature. And that's why the Dharma asks you, don't exhibit that nature. The weak actually should be protected. That's what Mahatma Gandhi also says. And he says when you pray for your own welfare and your own protection, it's a sin, he said. You get shocked when you hear some of the writings of Mahatma Gandhi, father of the nation. If you pray for your own welfare, your own well-being, let me be protected, O Lord. It's a selfish prayer, he says. It's a sin. He doesn't stop there saying that it's selfish prayer. He says it's a sin. Then what you should do? You should pray for the weak, he says. Let the weak be protected. That is a responsibility. The weak may not be in a position to pray because they are so pressed. Right? They are so oppressed and so they are in such intensive pain. They don't know what to do. They're confused. And now you're an educated man, you're a cultured man, you're a spiritual person. You have to pray for them. You have to extend this divine protection to them. Then you are a noble human being, he says. Praying for one's own self is also selfish instinct, he says. There's nothing noble there. So the weak must be protected. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said. So when you protect the weak like that, actually, a real egalitarian society can be built. The greater the actually you can manifest kindness and love towards your fellow human beings who are weaker, who are lower than you, economically, culturally, and spiritually, the greater you grow. So today, actually, by law, government is trying to create an egalitarian society, but it doesn't happen unless and until the individuals change. Democracy is all about the population. Democracy is all about the individuals. And today, unfortunately, the sorry state of affairs in our country is government doesn't understand ABCD of cultural empowerment and spiritual empowerment. They understand only economic empowerment, and they see that actually economic poverty is the only poverty. When you use the word poverty, only the economic sense actually strikes your mind. Okay, if somebody doesn't have money, he's poor means he suffers. That is the idea. Communists also entertain the same idea. But there are other poverties, cultural poverty, real poverty, spiritual poverty is real poverty. Even if just see somebody is not culturally empowered or spiritually empowered, you go to a village and empower the people. You think people are suffering poverty, they're all poor. That's why actually they are not enjoying life. Give them money, pour money at their doorstep and see what happens, how they conduct themselves, how they will spend their money from tomorrow onwards. Somebody who is not culturally empowered, how they will use that money? You drink, that's all. Only two things that they know, more drinking and more eating. That's how actually I want to enjoy life. More drinking and more eating. That's why before you empower people economically, you need to empower them culturally and spiritually. Otherwise, you will ruin their lives. You will ruin their lives. So this is the incumbent upon government. It has to do it, but it doesn't understand because culture and spirituality become part of religion now. So religion is untouchable now in this country because you are living in a secular polity. That's how actually they are interpreting secularism. Secularism means state has nothing to do with religion. But when the constitution makers, when they thought of secularism and they discussed and debated, what they meant is state will give equal patronage to all the religions because India is a multi-religious country. But today an attempt is being made to make it actually a non-religious country. So that's the actual reaction. Definitely there is. There's so much of corruption, there is so much of iniquity everywhere, the suffering, psychological suffering, physical suffering. So much of disease because of stress, because of competition, corruption. They are trying to make it a non-religious country and the state has nothing to do with it. So because state has nothing to do with religion, but the state makes a syllabus for educational curriculum. Right? Who is making the curriculum? NCRT, SCRT. They make the syllabus. The state has nothing to do with religion. Religion is a personal thing. So nothing of cultural, nothing of spiritual, nothing of moral, nothing of ethical finds a way into the school curriculum or college curriculum. They are all actually separated completely. And textbooks today, the children, they don't get to read anything about this, the cultural and spiritual empowerment. And as a result, the consequence you could clearly see what happened with two generations of people when they're deprived of these two things, cultural empowerment and spiritual empowerment. Corruption is eating into the vitals of the nation. The one great guru, spiritual guru, he says actually, it is not corruption. You can't call it corruption, you see. It is banditry, he said. Robbery. Banditry, robbery. So with this level of corruption and still you want to be happy in this country, how it would be possible? And today actually another sad state of affairs is that there is no way you can remove this corruption. You have to live with it. People are talking about you have to live with corona. Sometime back they told, no, like that, let us learn to live with corruption. You can't remove it. You can't, there's no way. They are not even exploring the means. Why we have brought our country to such a pass. What kind of intervention it needs. How you will be able to do it. So we have forgotten our, cultural and spiritual moorings. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. The whole world respects us because this is a spiritual land. They still consider it. Fortunately, many countries still consider India continues to be a spiritual land with the number of temples that they are there, the number of scriptures that we have, the sheer volume of spiritual thought that we have, no other race has it. And that surprises them. But of course, not many Indians today, they know that. How these things have happened. You have it. You're just actually sitting on the bank of the Ganges and you're, you know, crying of thirst and thirst and thirst. You can't drink. Since that much of spiritual thought is there, but it's not made mainstream. It's not given because it's a sectarian polity. And the damage that has been done to the society and the injustice that has been done to the followers of Sanatana Dharma, Vedic Dharma, is humongous. And Hindu doesn't understand actually. Forget about other minority religions actually. You have no problem with them perfectly. The problem is Hindu exploiting Hindu. Don't think actually only the people are corrupt people are there in other religions. It is this. Majority are Hindus, and majority of the Hindus have become morally corrupt because of this. Because they are not given the due share of spiritual values. The rich wealth that you have inherited from your forefathers, you have not got it. They should. It's a matter of serious concern. We need to reflect. And now they are thinking actually, the people who are at the helm, they think that actually the spirituality and cultural empowerment is not the job of the government. That organizations like Ramakrishna Mission or some other spiritual organization will do. It's not possible. This country is a vast country with 1.3 billion population. Organizations of this kind and 1,000 organizations also will not be able to do this. Unless you universalize this cultural and spiritual thought through school curriculum and college curriculum, it would be impossible to create actually a great society. Our resources won't be sufficient, too meager. No, that is their job. Values and ethics, they will inculcate values and ethics. They will preach values and ethics. No, it doesn't work like that. So, cultural poverty and spiritual poverty is plaguing the body politic of the nation. That is a serious problem. Everybody is talking we have to impart values and values. They don't know but how to go about it. You have to think seriously on this. It's a big problem. So the decline of dharma, is to the detriment of the entire population. If you just see the percentage of people suffering psychological problems, it is on the rise by the day, right? The doctors classify most of the modern diseases as psychosomatic. Why our forefathers, ancestors, they wanted us to become spiritual? Because it's not easy to control the mind if you are unrighteous. Why they insisted on morality, why they insisted on dharma, there is an objective. The objective is to attain the complete freedom. When complete freedom, mukti becomes your goal, you will be oriented towards righteousness. Even otherwise also, if you are not oriented towards mukti also, even to keep good physical health, it is important to practice morality. Otherwise, as we discussed here 2 weeks before, there will be conflict from within. Okay, there will be conflict from within. That conflict actually takes a toll on you. That's why Sri Ramakrishna again would insist that man mukh ek kora darkar, he says. You can't be a split personality. So when there is conflict within you, and there is no way you can actually lead a peaceful life. Body and mind are so closely connected that divido jayate vyadihi, shariro manasastatha, Mahabharata says. A disease of two kinds, mental and physical. So they are actually intricately connected. You can't exclude one. Parasparam tayor janma nirdvandvam na upalabhyate. If the mind falls sick, mind becomes sick, body automatically becomes weak. It's just a matter of time before it is expressed at a physical level. And if the body is weak, there's no way you can, keep yourself in good spirits. No, okay, it doesn't matter, my body is weak, I have cancer, but I will keep, very cheerful countenance. Is it possible? Right? A person like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa could say, because he had detached himself completely from the body. So he was suffering cancer. He never let actually that disease pull his mind down. He was experiencing the highest joy and the bliss. That would be possible only when you become enlightened. Before that, because as long as you exist at a physical and psychological level, that's what we are now, mind and body, that's all right. Human being means we understand. We experience only these two dimensions of our personality. The third dimension has not come into our experiences yet. So, to keep balance between these two, morality is important. Dharma is important. Righteousness is important. The whole world in that way is a temptation, and how much of it actually you can resist. There will always be the two forces, the centripetal and the centrifugal force. The centripetal force is dharma, God, which attracts you in one direction, and the centrifugal force is adharma, unrighteousness, the temptation of this world. So you are sandwiched between these two. A human being is a force, an entity which is sandwiched between these two forces. The two forces are operating simultaneously upon you. So, you want to come under the ambit of which force? You can decide. That's the beauty. Whether you want to come under the ambit of this centrifugal force, which is Maya, which is temptation, or you want to place yourself under the ambit of centripetal force, which is divine grace or dharma, or righteous life. So you have to choose. So for that, strength is required. Why people you think actually succumbing to temptation? But they don't have enough strength. This is Vivekananda talks about strength and strength and strength. He's not talking about physical strength. Physical strength very easy to gain. He was talking about intellectual and spiritual strength. That is more important. Once you are strong spiritually and intellectually, what you would actually, okay, it doesn't matter. You will keep good health naturally. So intellectual strength, mental strength and spiritual strength you have to gain. To practice dharma, to practice righteousness, you need to have this. And of course, if moksha becomes your goal, you don't even care for your life. Death is also okay for me, but I will not deviate from the path of righteousness. That much of strength comes to you. The temptation has come to you in such a way that you are asked to part with your life. Okay, you have to choose between dharma and your life. You will choose dharma to the exclusion of your life, and you are ready to die also. Satya Harishchandra was like that, right? Satya Harishchandra. We had examples in the past. Today also it's possible. We may not have that much of strength, but of course God will not make us pass through such intense tests. He knows actually our strength. But you just see Satya Harishchandra, what kind of test he made him pass through. He qualified the test. So, because life is continuity, right? Jatasya dhruva murtyu dhruvam janmam bhutasya cha. What is today, it is there. Tomorrow, it is not there. But I continue. Dehe nityam avadhyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata. Kshetrajna. Kshetrajna alone is real. Kshetra is not real. Kshetra is his body. Kshetrajna is God, soul or consciousness. That is eternal. That is immutable. If this body comes, another body comes to me. So what is that? So I don't care even for this life. Tremendous strength comes. Then you will be able to resist the temptation. You are a moral human being. You are the salt of the earth. All around it is decay. All around it is degeneration. But you are a noble being. You are a honest human being. You are an ethical human being. The world will respect. When there is conflict between dharma and adharma, you know that only dharma will win ultimately. Dharma is like fire. Nothing can burn fire. Fire burns everything. Nothing can defile fire. Nothing can make fire impure. It burns all impurities. Dharma is like that. But people say that I will be victimized, I will be, persecuted by people who are adharmic, unrighteous. No, you don't have to have fear. Adharma cannot even touch dharma remotely. But you should have that faith. And when you have that faith and when moksha becomes your goal, it becomes easy for us, to follow the path of dharma. And so, even from the health point of view also, as Swami says, unselfishness is more paying, but we don't have the patience to practice it. We need to practice unselfishness, not for spiritual gain, even to keep good health, physical health. It is important, he says. Dharma is important even from that perspective. So let us bring as much righteousness and as much dharma into our lives as possible. So everything else is a temptation. How maybe society respects if you are a rich person. Society may not respect if you are not that rich. Morally, you are exceptional. You have honesty, you have love and kindness in your heart. Right? You are an ethical human being. Society may not respect because you are poor, you don't have money. It doesn't matter. I already told you in previous talks that you need to become a VIP in the eyes of the Lord, not in the eyes of the people. If you have virtue and if you have honesty in you, you are VIP in the eyes of the Lord. But you are zero in the eyes of the society, fellow human beings. It doesn't matter, right? They are all mortals like me. Today I will die, tomorrow they will also die. They die and I die. So why should I care to prove myself to other mortal? I am immortal, they are also mortals. All the time this is the struggle. Okay? Society is the baseline. I want to prove myself to the society. Where is the society? It's just your imagination. Society is only a group of individuals. Every individual has the freedom and choice to decide for himself or herself what he wants to be or she wants to be. That's all. Don't care for the society. There's no society other than, it's just in a thought. It's just an imagination in your head. So keep aside this idea of society, then you'll gain enormous strength. Tremendous strength will come. Just live for your sake. And what I want, what are my values, what I need really in life, what I really want in life. Is this is the thing that I really want in my life, or is there something else? You decide it for yourself and then go ahead, that's all. Your life is too brief a happening. So don't give any importance to this shallow society. I mean, saying that Swamiji says that societies are based on bad generalizations. So you don't have to prove yourself to the society or to the people around. You just decide for yourself what is the highest thing that you want and what is the best thing to aspire for having come here as a human being. Our scriptures in one voice they say that is human being and the birth of human being is not an ordinary birth. You have got a rare gift from the Lord, that human birth. It's not an ordinary thing. Exceptional gift you have got from nature, and make good use of that gift. Try to know how to use it. But actually, if you are a spiritual aspirant, everything else will be added to you by default, automatically. You don't have to struggle much. So, mukshatva, desire for freedom, is a thing that you need to cultivate. Political freedom we never cared for in this country. Okay, we never, gave that much of importance to the external things because we know that death is the only certainty. So before I die, what is the best thing that I can aspire for? The highest freedom, immortality, that's God. So spiritual freedom, the highest freedom, in one way, the present circumstances in the society, last class also we discussed, are highly congenial for spiritual life, for one to cultivate spiritual life, because there is so much of confusion, everywhere it's frustration. That means the world around, the physical world is by nature is defective. This is not perfect. So everything is orderly outside. There's no corruption. Let us say everybody is a noble human being. Whatever that you wish for actually is happening. The physical world, life is so comfortable. Life is so smooth. Everything is going. Then you may not think of God. Okay, there's a danger. So today there is such confusion in the society. Make good use of that. So there is no perfection around. So if you think too much about the society, you'll get frustrated. There's a great chance of that, unless you are spiritually empowered. So, in that way, the circumstances are highly congenial and favorable for one actually to practice spirituality, to come to the spiritual path. Because we understand that world means entropy, prakriti means disorder, prakriti means equilibrium between tamas, rajas, and sattva. Once the equilibrium is regained, there is no prakriti, there is no world of name and form. And for that, actually, you need to ponder deep on your own existence. You need to turn inward and you need to experience the soul as soul. Once you experience that, the prakriti or the world of name and form disappears for you forever. So this century, of Brahmachari Maharaj was telling the other day that this century belongs to philosophers. This century belongs to philosophers. So you need to become a philosopher. An average Hindu is a philosopher till the other day, till actually the secularism has come into our society. We Hindus have always been mystics and philosophers. And that is our, genius. Not ordinary philosophers. We are not armchair philosophers, practical philosophers. And that is the, great boon that we have here, because our rishis worked so much, did so much of tapas, and they gave so much of wisdom to us. There's no way you can escape from spirituality if you are in India. But such a huge effort, has been made to make the country a non-religious and non-spiritual country in the name of so-called secularism. That you need to understand, you should not fall prey to such forces. And of course, it's always an individual game, because it's an individual game. Your life, your choice. This is my life and my choice. What choice you want to make? Please think. The young people are there assembly for them. Okay, let us pray to the divine that he might help us to reach the absolute in this birth itself. Pray to Sri Ramakrishna and try to have his blessings. Things will happen smooth for you in life. Let us meditate for 2 minutes before we disperse. Let's call it a day for now. Om.